Hello, am I on? Well, damn, I'm loud. Thank you, and are we all still conscious? It's the end of the day, there's been a lot of knowledge. I'm certainly feeling a little bit wow. I feel slightly like the best man at a wedding doing the last talk. I kind of need to do a few thanks, mostly to the team that have put this event together. I think we all know a ton of work goes into organizing something like this, so thank you very much. And next up, thank you to all of you for coming, taking time out of your lives and your busy working days to come and listen to some great talks, and now you get to listen to me. Okay, so a quick agenda. Who the hell am I? That's the reason you're here. What is this faceted product search? What do I mean by it? A few definitions. And lastly, a little sort of story time of how we used it in a project recently to come and really sort out performance in a project that was dying, really, to put it nicely. Okay, so who am I? So I'm Geoff Cowen. I'm the founder of an agency called Orionesque. I'm based down in the southwest of England in the beautiful county of Devon, normally known more for kind of farming, dairy, a lot of cream teas, that sort of thing. But there's a few technology companies down there, so we're changing it bit by bit. My history, I'm primarily a PHP developer. Fear not, you've seen enough PHP code for today. There won't be any of it. When it comes to Orionesque, who are we? Originally, we were formed in 2004, I think it was, as a kind of classic web development design agency helping out originally our friends, family, as a lot of agencies started, and then moving on to their companies, bigger companies, some crazy, big, scary companies in lots of different industries. And this, as I say, going back that far, was kind of in the days of HTML tables for layout and frames and animated GIFs before they kind of had this rather weird comeback in this sort of retro hipster thing that's going on at the moment, which still don't really understand. And then as things got more complicated, websites became more dynamic, they started talking to databases, they start talking to third-party services, things start going on. And what really started to happen is we found a lot of our clients saying, why is it so slow? Things were getting more complicated. So we kind of pivoted at that point, just to use another nice hipster term, into more of a performance role, helping out our customers and other agencies in figuring out what the hell's going on. And it's about this time that we stumbled upon Redis, and we've kind of used it ever since as one of our bits of our toolbox. So moving on, what do I mean by this whole faceted thing? Well, asking a fairly popular search engine, they give you a dictionary definition. The first one, it's one side of something with many sides, especially a cut gem. That's not really what we're talking about. But the second one it's a particular aspect or feature of something. And so that's really what we mean in this case by a facet. And before you all have a seizure with this GIF, I'll move on. Again, when it actually comes to the full thing, what's this search, navigation, faceted thing? The holy truth that is Wikipedia gives us this rather succinct definition. And really the key part is the top part. It allows users to narrow down search results by applying multiple filters based upon faceted classification of the items. Phew. So is it just filters? Kinda. If you ask Norman Nielsen, or Nielsen, Norman, whichever way around they are, who kind of write about all things web and pattern and process-wise, and that's all they seem to do, they say really no. They say really a filter is when you get a data set and you reduce it down by one thing. So status is open or closed, or the color is blue, that sort of thing. Whereas faceted navigation search is really when you start to apply lots of multiple attributes to really drill this item down. Now the graphic, by the way, if you're wondering what the hell that is, it was originally meant to be one of those lovely Venn diagrams, and then I remembered that I'm not a designer. And that's about as far as I got with it before I just gave up and thought, I'll leave it there, just for a bit of embarrassment for me. So, what does it look like? I generally come from a web development world, so I'm used to seeing this sort of thing. So, this is John Lewis. So, if you're not from the UK, they're a big department store type retailer. they sell everything. Clothes to televisions, children's toys to credit cards, you name it. And as we're nearly at that time of year, they sell Christmas trees. So what you can see here on the left-hand side, or that left-hand side, wherever we are, these are a whole ton of the different facets that you can drill down and use on. So we're talking what type of tree it is, the height, does it come with lights, does it make the tea, does it open your own, the presents for you, the whole kind of jazz. And there's a lot of them. This is from a company called Wix. They're a big retailer of building and home decoration type things, so they sell paint, bricks, kitchens, all that sort of stuff. And this again is showing you just some of the little options they're doing, so the brand, the finish, yada yada. Now, what's the case with both of these two examples is the different facets are dependent upon the category you're in, because obviously if you're looking at Christmas trees, you want to know the height, but if you're looking at kids' clothes, you probably don't. You want to know the size and the color and this, that, and the other. So each one is very much tailored to the category that you're in. Another thing that a lot of these do, which is helpful for the user, is they show the count. How many are in this? If I'm going to click on this option, what am I going to do? Most of them, as a pattern, tend that once you click, they reload the page, because they keep on reducing those options down further and further again. Now, this is where we're in the world of hipster GIFs. Hopefully it keeps on repeating. This is Ford Motors in the UK. This is their used car section. And they really go to town on these different sort of facets and things, because again, buying a second-hand car or van, you're going to be really choosing it in 101 different ways. So yeah, there's a whole ton of options here. Oh, it does loop, good. So, should you be offering this on your project, your website, your web app, whatever it happens to be? The answer is it depends. You probably should consider it if your product data, your metadata is good. Are you storing a whole ton of stuff about this one way or the other? And equally, do your products naturally form these sorts of facets? Is it obvious to your users how these products are going to be defined? Now, I find that many organizations, large and small, fall into a trap where they tend to think of their products in a way that their users don't. They tend to think of things in part numbers, in divisions, in sectors, in markets, and this and the other. Generally, your customers don't. They just know they want a Christmas tree or whatever it happened to be. But maybe they do. So, on the other side of this, where you might not, actually, maybe your customers are thinking of things in part numbers and ident codes and divisions and this and that, and model numbers. At which point they're probably more likely to just want to come straight to your site or application and just use the search and type in ABC 123FG or whatever it is and go bang straight to the result. Equally, if there's not a great deal of products, it's pretty pointless, just show them all. And equally, if the kind of content that you've got is pretty diverse and a bit random, then your users are not really going to be able to sort of work their way through this to figure it out. So, story time. This is something we often do. Redis is one of those parts of our toolkit that we bring in just to help sort out issues, generally, especially when it comes to performance. So this was a case where there was an existing project with an agency we're friendly with, that we do a lot of work with, where they'd started work on a pretty big stock photography site. It was quite a specialist stock photography site in that it was all to do with flowers and plants and trees and mosses and grasses and all this sort of stuff. And they'd got quite a long way into the project before they realized that the CMS, in this case Expression Engine, which is was back then a commercial PHP MySQL type run-of-the-mill CMS. It's now gone open source and it's all good. But this whole story could apply to pretty much any CMS. They all work more or less in the same way. So to summarize, what was the issue? So it was an existing project. It was probably about 95% built when we got called in, which is probably not the ideal time to go in. So yeah, it was built on a commercial CMS. There was a hell of a lot of content in there. I think at the time it had about 500,000 images. Each of those images had a whole ton of different attributes associated with it, such as its category it's in, the primary color, the secondary color, the image orientation, is it portrait, landscape, a whole ton of tags, a whole load of descriptions, all sorts of things. So they're not going to want to start that all over again. And so the client they were pretty happy with it. They understood the CMS for one reason or another. They liked the workflow, which you'll see in a moment. It was easy for them. They liked it. And as always, the budget was gone, which we've heard once or twice before. And unfortunately, when they picked this CMS, on their tick list of features, it said, we do search. Well, it does, but not good enough. So the client workflow, they had it easy. You can see why they liked it. They go off to exotic places, take a whole load of photographs. They specialize in a lot of alpine flowers, rare orchids, this sort of stuff. So they went hiking in the hills in the Swiss Alps or whatever it is. It's a pretty good life. They'd come back, they'd take a whole data card full of images, they'd edit them, and then what they were doing is they were using the EXIF data within the images, and they were pretty much abusing the hell out of it. But all those various attributes were being put into the EXIF, so all the things that we might want to filter and search our way through were in there. They then just dropped them into Dropbox, which was a hierarchical folder structure that looked like the primary categories. So we start off with plants, then flowers, then alpines, then orchids, then whatever they happen to be. They'd magically appear on the website, wait for the sales to roll in. So they're not going to want to change this. They could then see something pretty ugly like this. This isn't an exact version of it. I can't actually show you the real thing because I'm NDA'd up to the hilt. But it looks something like this, a CMS. Most of them are pretty ugly. So what was the real workflow? What was going on at the time? Yeah, it was just some magic, really. You don't really need to know for the case of this talk, but yeah, we had watchers looking at folders as soon as images popped in. We were checking the file sizes, coming back a minute later. If they hadn't changed, we'd assume they're finished. We'd pull all the data out, throw in the S3, blah, 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 throw it into the database, one way or the other. It was great. So what was the bottleneck with all this, especially on the front end? It was essentially the data schema within, in this case, MySQL. And it wasn't really this particular CMS's fault. It was just being pushed and pulled really in a way it wasn't designed to do. So yes, search was an afterthought in this case, and it's often, we've seen this quite a lot. We've joined in on quite a few projects like this, not just with Expression Engine, but with a few different CMSs, where, yeah, they kind of just hoped it would work. So how do we fix it at this sort of late stage in the day? And bearing in mind that these performance things, these were showing up on production. We weren't even live yet, and then we were going, this is a little bit clunky. So once users hit this, we knew it was going to really, I think the phrase is hit the fan. We brought Redis in. What a surprise, we're at a Redis day. Specifically, we pulled in a whole load of sets. As I say, sets, and more sets. We abused the hell out of them. And essentially, every form of facet became a set. So the color blue, the color pink, whatever it happens to be, that's a set all of its own. So it was super simple. We looked at all their data. We said, what can we do with this? What facets and attributes are your users going to want to be able to filter on and reduce their way down? Because obviously we've got a whole ton of information about every single image that the user probably doesn't care about, and they're definitely not going to want to search on, but it needs to be shown on each page. And actually, if you're in the talk yesterday about sort of data modeling, that's a quite frequent thing where half the gumph that's in your database, you're not going to want half the time. We then agreed with the team on a naming structure. I think we'll all know that we probably spend more time doing that than anything else, coming up with variable names and this and then arguing about it for hours on end. So we went with something really simple. Attribute name, attribute value. And in that go all of the entry IDs. So the entry ID for this case is its unique identifier within the CMS. We then use, so in the CMS, it's got this thing called hooks. I think most of them have got a version of it. They all seem to call it something different. They're hooks, they're events, they're various stages. So in the life cycle of an operation, there's a whole bunch of stages where you can grab in and go and say, hey, let me just take a copy of that data and do something with it. So we use that at this point. When an image was being saved or updated or deleted, we go in and say, hey, hold on a moment. and we'd throw it into Redis. We'd basically loop through it into sets. The joy of a set, as you all know, is that it's unique, so we could throw it in over and over again. We didn't have to do any checking. We didn't have to do any of that sort of crazy stuff. We just kept on throwing it in. We then, like all good projects, wrote an incredibly hacky script, which, because this was an existing project, we had a whole ton of entries in there. We had to batch our way through them and get them into Redis. This was reasonably simple to make, and it ended up being used quite often by the client as a, I don't trust the search, let's just make it fresh all over again. So, okay, they were happy. And then profit. Lastly, what did we do to get all this stuff back out of there again? Again, there's no code, fear not, it's all pretty abstract. So we built a dynamic form, again, based on sets, showing for whichever category you happen to be in, which facets were available. So these were another whole bunch of sets that we were basically doing counts on. We then used something called the PRG pattern method, whichever way around it is. So basically the user would post with the form, with a list of options on the right-hand side. We'd then grab all that data, shuffle it about, put it into an order, basically A to Z it, lowercase it, do some sanity checking, make sure there was nothing really crazy going on, and then redirect to a get string. The joy of the get string, of course, is that it was shareable, savable, and human readable more than anything, and made sense, whereas the default, in this case, CMS search, had a habit of just giving you this gibberish string, which we didn't like. So as a step, we do a quick look with a plugin that basically looked at that get string, once again did some sanity on it, and basically converted it into a basically sort of some set lookups, some gets is all it was doing. For a bit of caching, for a bit of performance, we'd look up to say if there was more than one facet being operated on, we'd look to see if there's already a set that's been created of color, blue, orientation, portrait, whatever. If there was, we'd return it. If there wasn't, we'd basically create one with s_inter_store that does the intersection and stores it in a new key. We'd set an expire on it, which I think at the time was something like 4 hours, which seemed long enough. They weren't uploading that many images. We would then, from that result, all it gave us was a whole wodge of entry IDs, which were unique to the CMS. And at that point, we passed them back into the CMS because that's what it's there for. It had its own templating language. We didn't need to handle it at this point. We put it back in. It handled the ordering, which was set by the user. Are we going A to Z, newest, oldest, that sort of stuff? Which, remember, all that data is already held in the CMS. It might not necessarily have been put into Redis. At this point, we didn't really care about it. But for just plain, simple filtering, this was a super quick fix. Now, obviously, for more advanced things, we would start using sorted sets to do ordering and weighting and this and the other. The magic that is Redis search, of course, could have been thrown into this. I'll let you play with that. But essentially, that was our super quick solution. And I'm pretty sure at this point that the bar's about to open. So thank you very much.